After a sharp kick, Amara's face flew into the plate of shrimp and grits. The hot, creamy cheese seared her skin. Bits of scallion clung to her cheeks. Her mother-in-law and husband laughed out loud, their voices echoing through the upscale Atlanta restaurant. "Look at this clumsy fool, making a scene again." Wiping her face with a napkin, Amara stood up from her chair. They had no idea what she was about to do. She turned and walked toward the exit without hysterics, tears, or explanations. Her steps were measured and clear, as if she had known the route in advance. Her husband, Malik, was the first to stop laughing. He was used to something else to please, apologies, to the way Amara would guiltily lower her eyes and whisper, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Where you goin'?" he yelled after her. "Amara, stop, I'm talking to you." She didn't turn around. The restaurant door closed softly behind her. An awkward silence fell over the dining room. Patrons at nearby tables looked away, pretending they hadn't noticed anything. Only an elderly woman by the window watched Malik with undisguised contempt. His mother, Mama Rose, let out a nervous chuckle. "Well, now she's all offended. Oh, Malik, baby, she'll be back, just like always. Where else is she gonna go?" Malik threw his napkin on the table and cursed under his breath. He pulled out his phone and dialed his wife's number. She declined the call. He dialed again. Declined. The third time, the phone was unavailable. "She turned it off," he muttered. "She's lost her damn mind." Mama Rose patted her son's hand. "Don't you worry, she always comes back. Just wanted some attention. That's why she made a scene." Malik nodded, but something new flickered in his eyes. Uncertainty. Amara had never left like this. Usually, she sat there, endured it, and apologized even when it wasn't her fault. But today, in the straight line of her shoulders, in her posture, there was something different, something final. Amara walked through the evening city, a strange emptiness in her head. Not anger, not resentment, just a void, like after a long illness when the fever finally breaks and only weakness remains. She turned her phone on, looked at the screen, 17 missed calls from Malik, silenced it, and shoved it back in her purse. Her feet carried her on their own to the MARTA station, then onto a train, then through familiar streets to a house she hadn't visited in 3 years, her parents' home. Her mother opened the door and gasped, "Amara, baby, what happened to you?" Only then did Amara remember the remnants of grits on her face, her blouse stained with sauce, her hair disheveled. She looked at her mother, and suddenly, everything hit her at once. Not tears, but something heavier than tears. She simply leaned her forehead against her mother's shoulder and exhaled. "I can't do this anymore, Mama." Her mother pulled her into the house, sat her on the sofa, brought her a warm blanket and a cup of sweet tea, asking no questions. She just sat beside her, stroking her head like she did when Amara was a child. Her father came out of his study, saw his daughter, and clenched his fists. "That boy again. Don't, Daddy," Amara said quietly. "I'm just leaving him." Her father and mother exchanged a look. They had been waiting to hear those words for 3 years. Ever since the day Amara first came to them with a bruise under her eye and lied about a clumsy fall. Since the day she stopped coming to family cookouts because Malik wouldn't allow it. Since the day that constant, apologetic tone appeared in her voice. "You're staying here," her father said firmly. "We'll file for divorce tomorrow." Amara nodded. For the first time in a long time, she felt she could breathe deeply. Malik showed up the next day, ringing the doorbell insistently, demandingly. Her father opened it, blocking the doorway with his body. "What do you want? I need to talk to my wife." Malik tried to squeeze past, but her father didn't budge. "You don't have a wife here. You have a woman who is filing for divorce." Malik's face twisted. "Who the hell are you to decide for her?" "Amara, come out here, let's talk like adults." Amara came out of the room. She had changed into comfortable clothes, her hair tied in a ponytail. Her face was calm. Malik took a step toward her, but her father caught his shoulder. "One more step and I'm calling the police." "On what grounds?" "That's my wife. This is my daughter." Her father spoke quietly, but his voice was like steel. "And if you don't get out of here right now, I will personally make sure that every punch, every humiliation is documented and handed over to the court." Malik turned pale. He looked at Amara, expecting her to intervene as always. But Amara remained silent. "Amara?" He tried a different tone. "What are you doing? Tearing our family apart over some stupid little thing? I was just playing yesterday. You got no sense of humor?" "You kicked me," Amara said evenly. "You shoved my face into a plate in front of everyone. I didn't kick you. I nudged you. You fell on your own. Leave, Malik. You'll regret this." he screamed. You think anyone will want someone like you? You're 32. You're nothing without me. I gave you everything. You gave me bruises, Amara answered calmly. And fear? And the feeling that I'm worthless? But you know what? I'd rather be nobody alone than somebody with you. She turned and walked back to her room. Her father slammed the door in Malik's face. He stood there for a moment, then slammed his fist against the door with a loud thud and left, shouting threats. Amara sat on her bed and hugged her knees. Her hands were shaking, but inside, where only fear used to be, something new had appeared: determination. A week later, Amara went to the police, bringing photos of old bruises she had secretly taken on her phone, text messages where Malik threatened her, and recordings of their arguments. She had been collecting it all for 3 years, not knowing why, just in case. The desk sergeant, a woman in her 40s, listened to her carefully and nodded. File the report. This will all be useful in court. What happens next? Amara asked quietly. Next, you'll get a divorce. He'll get a restraining order. If he violates it, it's a criminal offense. You're free, you understand? Free. A strange word. Amara had long forgotten what it felt like to be free. She left the station and suddenly caught herself smiling. Just because. For no reason. For the first time in months. Malik didn't give up. He called from different numbers, wrote from fake accounts, and waited outside her parents' house. Mama Rose also got involved, coming over, crying, and accusing Amara of being cold and ungrateful. How can you leave my boy? She wailed. He tried so hard for you. He beat me, Amara said. So what? All men lose their temper sometimes. I bet you're no angel. You probably provoked him. Amara simply closed the door. In the past, she would have stood there, listening, making excuses. Not anymore. The divorce dragged on. Malik demanded half of their apartment and compensation for emotional distress. His lawyer tried to portray Amara as a hysterical provocateur. But Amara had evidence, photos, recordings, and witness statements from neighbors who had heard the shouting. And she also had the security camera footage from that restaurant. The footage arrived a week after she filed the lawsuit. Amara's lawyer, Miss Imani Thompson, invited her to the office specifically to watch it. I've already seen it, the lawyer said, opening her laptop. This is exactly what we need. Amara watched the screen, clenching her fists. There she was, sitting at the table, bent over her plate. There was Malik, saying something, his face twisted with anger. Then, a sharp movement of his leg under the table, and her head fell right into the grits. The camera captured everything: the kick, Malik and his mother laughing and pointing at her, and the other diners turning away, not wanting to get involved. Public humiliation, physical assault with witnesses, Miss Thompson listed. Plus, we have a statement from a waitress who agreed to testify. She said it wasn't the first time she'd seen you with bruises. Amara nodded. Her throat tightened with memories, but she forced herself to breathe evenly. Tears wouldn't help anymore, only facts and evidence. What about his claims on the apartment? The lawyer smiled. That part is simple. The condo was inherited from your grandmother after the marriage, but by law, it's not marital property. He has no rights to it. As for his demand for compensation? She paused. Here, he made a mistake. By claiming you didn't work and lived off him, he forgot that we have records of your income. You've been working remotely. He made me give him all the money, Amara said quietly. He said I didn't know how to handle finances. That's called economic abuse, Miss Thompson said firmly. And we'll use that too. Amara, I want you to be ready for the court hearing. He will apply pressure, manipulate, and possibly try to make the judge feel sorry for him. You have to stay strong. Amara met her gaze. I'm ready. The court hearing was set for a Tuesday. Amara arrived with her parents and her lawyer. Her mother held her hand tightly as they waited in the hallway. You're doing great, baby girl, she whispered. You're so strong. Her father was silent, but his presence beside her gave her confidence. He was ready to protect his daughter at any cost. Malik appeared with his mother and some cheap lawyer he had apparently found at the last minute. Mama Rose immediately began to complain loudly. There she is, the ungrateful one. My son supported her for 3 years, and now she wants to leave him with nothing. A bailiff asked her to be quiet. Malik looked at Amara with such hatred that she involuntarily stepped back. But her mother squeezed her hand tighter, and her father stepped forward, shielding her. Don't you even look in her direction, he said quietly, but with such force that Malik turned pale. In the courtroom, Amara sat between her lawyer and her parents. Her hands were shaking, but she forced herself to breathe deeply and evenly. The judge, a woman in her 50s with a weary face, reviewed the documents and began the session. Malik spoke first. He talked about how wonderful their family life was, how he cared for his wife, provided for her, and how she suddenly decided to destroy everything over a small argument. "It was a misunderstanding," he said, feigning remorse. "I raised my voice a little, and she took it too personally. You know how women are, so emotional." The judge looked up. "A misunderstanding. I have a police report here for battery." "That's all an exaggeration," Mama Rose interjected. "She gave herself those bruises to frame my son. I will have order in my court," the judge said sternly, "or I will ask you to leave." It was Amara's turn. She stood up, feeling her knees buckle, but her voice came out surprisingly firm. "For 3 years, I endured humiliation, beatings, and psychological abuse. I was afraid to leave because he threatened to kill me. But that night in the restaurant, when he kicked me in front of everyone, I realized it would only get worse. I gathered evidence. Here are photos of my injuries with dates. Here are the text messages where he threatens me. Here are the medical records." Miss Thompson handed the judge a folder of documents. The judge silently flipped through the pages, her expression growing sterner. "We also have the security camera footage from the restaurant," the lawyer added. "It clearly shows the defendant striking the plaintiff." The recording was played on a large screen. A hush fell over the room. Amara didn't look at the screen. She looked at Malik. His confident expression was becoming more and more tense. He clearly hadn't expected the footage to be so clear. When the video ended, the judge put down her pen. "What do you have to say in your defense?" Malik tried to justify himself. "It was an accident. I was just trying to move my chair and accidentally bumped her, and she deliberately fell face first into the plate to make a scene." "Accidentally?" the judge repeated. "The recording clearly shows you intentionally kicking her, and then you and your mother laughing." Mama Rose jumped up. "It's a fake." "They doctored the video. An expert has confirmed the authenticity of the recording," Miss Thompson said calmly. "We also have testimony from the waitress, the restaurant manager, and 3 patrons who witnessed the incident." The judge gave Malik a long look. "I see a pattern of systematic domestic violence here. Physical, psychological, and economic. I have no reason to doubt the plaintiff's words. Moreover, your behavior in court only confirms her testimony." Malik went pale. His lawyer tried to say something, but the judge stopped him with a gesture. "The marriage is dissolved. The property inherited by the plaintiff remains her sole property. The request for compensation is denied. Furthermore, given the proven facts of abuse, I am ordering the defendant to pay the plaintiff $25,000 in compensation for emotional distress." "What?" Malik roared. "That's not fair." "I am also extending the restraining order for a period of 3 years," the judge continued. "Any violation will be punished with a fine and possible imprisonment. The case materials are being forwarded to the district attorney's office to consider filing criminal charges for battery and threats." Mama Rose screamed something offensive, but the bailiffs were already approaching her. Malik sat, gripping the table. His face was crimson with rage. Amara felt the tension of the past weeks suddenly release. Her mother hugged her, and she finally allowed herself to cry. But these were tears of relief, not pain. "It's over," her mother whispered. "It's all over, baby." Leaving the courthouse, Amara turned and saw Malik and his mother standing at the entrance. He looked at her with such malice that she would have been scared before, but now she just turned and walked away, holding her parents' hands. The law was on her side. Justice had prevailed, and for the first time in 3 years, she felt truly free. "Let's go home, baby girl," her father said quietly. "It's all behind you now." But Amara knew this wasn't the end, it was just the beginning. The first night after the trial, she slept for 14 hours straight, without nightmares, without flinching at every sound. She woke up to the smell of bacon and biscuits. Her mother was in the kitchen, humming to herself. Amara lay in her old room, looking at the familiar childhood wallpaper, and couldn't believe this was real. She was afraid to go back to her own apartment. The constant feeling of anxiety that Malik might be behind the door or waiting for her on the landing gave her no peace. Her phone buzzed with messages. Miss Thompson sent copies of all the court documents and reminded her of the need to change the locks in her apartment. The thought of returning to that place made her nauseous. "Mama," Amara said, coming into the kitchen wrapped in an old robe. "Can I stay with you a little longer?" Her mother turned, and a flash of understanding crossed her eyes. "Stay as long as you need." But you know, sooner or later, you'll have to go back. It's your apartment, your space. You can't let him take that from you too. Amara nodded, knowing her mother was right. A week later, she gathered her courage. Her father went with her, just stood by her side while she opened the door with trembling hands. The apartment greeted them with silence and dust. Malik had managed to take his things before the trial, but his presence was still felt in every corner. The dent in the hallway wall. That's where he threw his phone, missing her by inches. The scratch on the bedroom door, from when he kicked it in after she had locked herself inside. The stain on the living room carpet. Spilled wine from a glass he had thrown at her during another fight. "Daddy," Amara whispered. "I can't live here." Her father silently hugged her and then said, "Then, make it a different place. A new one." The next 2 weeks, Amara spent transforming the apartment. She hired workers who plastered all the dents and repainted the walls. She threw out all the furniture they had bought together, changed the locks, laid down a new rug, and hung bright curtains instead of the heavy, dark drapes Mama Rose had chosen. With each change, it became easier to breathe. Her mother helped her pick out a new sofa. Soft, beige, nothing like the black leather monster Malik used to sit on with a bottle of beer. Amara's friend, with whom she had reconnected after 3 years of silence, brought over houseplants. "Something living in the house is important," she said, arranging the pots on the windowsill. "You take care of them, and you'll come back to life too." Amara wasn't sure it worked that way, but she nodded. A month after the trial, the first letter arrived. Miss Thompson called early in the morning. "Amara, the DA's office has filed criminal charges for battery and threats. You'll need to give a statement." Her heart sank, but Amara agreed. The detective was a man in his 50s with kind eyes. He listened patiently to her story, not interrupting, not rushing. When Amara got to the moment in the restaurant, her voice wavered. "You see, the scariest part wasn't that he pushed me, but that everyone saw, and no one stepped in. Everyone just watched." The detective nodded. "Unfortunately, that's a common situation. People are afraid to get involved, but it's good that the video footage was saved. It's strong evidence." He showed her the case file. It contained not only her photos and recordings, but also statements from neighbors. It turned out that many had heard the screams from their apartment but had stayed silent. Now that the case was public, they were talking. One neighbor, an elderly woman from the 3rd floor, wrote in her statement, "I heard him yelling at her many times, heard her crying. Once I saw her with a bruise under her eye. I was ashamed that I kept quiet, but I was scared." Amara read those lines and felt a strange mix of relief and bitterness. The criminal trial was scheduled for December. Amara prepared for it like an exam, rereading her notes, recalling dates, reconstructing the timeline of events. Miss Thompson helped but warned her. "Malik's lawyer will be there. He'll try to discredit you, to present him as the victim. Be ready for unpleasant questions." Amara nodded. She was ready. On the day of the trial, she wore a tailored gray suit and pulled her hair into a bun. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized her own reflection. This was a different woman, with a straight back and a steady gaze. Malik sat in the courtroom with a stone face. Mama Rose was perched beside him, dressed in black as if for a funeral. When Amara walked in, her former mother-in-law shot her a venomous look, but Amara didn't even blink. The prosecutor read the charges: systematic battery, threats, psychological abuse. Malik's lawyer, a young, cocky man in an expensive suit, began his speech by saying his client was a passionate but loving husband. The incident in the restaurant was an unfortunate misunderstanding. Amara provoked the conflict herself, he declared. She was constantly making scenes, was hysterical and unstable. Amara clenched her fists under the table but said nothing. When it was her turn to testify, she spoke calmly and clearly. She told them about the first time he hit her, 6 months after their wedding, when she didn't have dinner ready on time. About how he apologized, cried, and swore he would never hit her again. About how it happened again and again, getting worse each time. He told me it was my fault, that I pushed him to it, that if I were a real wife, he wouldn't have to discipline me. Amara's voice didn't tremble. She looked directly at the judge, not at Malik. The lawyer tried to attack. "But you stayed with him for 3 years. If everything was so terrible, why didn't you leave sooner?" Amara turned to him. "Because I was afraid. Because he threatened to kill me if I left. Because I believed I deserved it. Because he destroyed my sense of self, to the point where I thought I was worthless. Is that enough for you?" A silence fell over the courtroom. The judge adjourned the hearing for a week to review the materials. Amara walked out of the courtroom and sat on a bench in the building's courtyard. Her hands were shaking, and there was a lump in her throat. Her father silently handed her a bottle of water. "You were magnificent," he said. Amara shook her head. "I just told the truth." "And that's the hardest part," her mother added, sitting down beside her. The three of them sat there, looking up at the gray December sky. Crows cawed somewhere in the distance. Amara closed her eyes and turned her face to the cold wind. She didn't know what the verdict would be, but she knew for sure that no matter what happened, she would never again let anyone treat her the way Malik had. That chapter of her life was closed, and a blank page lay ahead. Amara stood in the middle of her renovated living room, looking at her phone. The screen glowed with a notification from Miss Thompson. Her heart skipped a beat. The lawyer only wrote about the case. "Amara, we need to meet tomorrow morning. There's news on the criminal case. Please come by at 10. Her fingers trembled. She sank onto the new sofa she had bought a week ago. Soft, beige, nothing like the dark brown leather monster her mother-in-law had chosen. Amara ran her hand over the upholstery, trying to calm herself. "Amara, you want some tea?" Her father's voice came from the kitchen. "Yes, please, Daddy," she called back, getting up from the sofa. The kitchen smelled of mint and honey. Her father was pouring tea into cups. Her mother was cutting an apple pie she had baked that morning. Miss Thompson texted. Amara said, sitting at the table, "We have a meeting tomorrow." She said there's news. Her mother froze with the knife in her hand. "What kind of news?" "I don't know, she just asked me to come." Her father pushed a cup of tea toward her. "Everything will be fine, baby girl. You've been through so much already." Amara nodded, but the anxiety wouldn't leave. She wrapped her hands around the hot cup, soaking in the warmth. Outside, dusk was falling. Somewhere, on the other side of the city, lived Malik. She wondered what he was thinking. Was he angry? Was he planning something? The restraining order was in effect, but it was just a piece of paper. Amara knew Malik wasn't one to give up easily. For 3 years, she had watched his rage whenever something didn't go his way. She barely slept that night, tossing and turning, listening to the clock tick on the nightstand. At 4 a.m., she gave up and turned on the light. She picked up a book and read without comprehending the words, just letting her eyes glide over the lines. At 9 a.m., Amara was already standing at the mirror in the hallway, adjusting the collar of her blouse. A tailored gray suit, hair in a bun, minimal makeup. She had learned to look confident even when everything inside was clenched with fear. Miss Thompson's office was downtown, on the 4th floor of an old but well-maintained building. Amara took the stairs. The elevator still caused panic attacks after the time Malik had trapped her in it, demanding an apology for a non-existent offense. The receptionist smiled warmly. "Go on in. Miss Thompson is waiting." The lawyer sat behind a massive desk. A thick folder of documents lay in front of her. When Amara entered, she looked up and gestured for her to sit. "Thank you for coming, miss." Thompson began. "I have some really important news." Amara swallowed. "Bad news. That depends on how you look at it." The lawyer opened the folder. "The investigation is complete, but the court hasn't issued a verdict yet. The date for the second hearing has been set for next Monday. So it had begun. The real beginning of the end. What does that mean for me? You'll have to testify in detail again. Talk about the instances of violence that were documented. Be prepared for Malik's defense to try to discredit you again." "How?" Miss Thompson folded her hands on the table. "Standard tactics, just like last time." Amara felt a familiar spark of anger ignite within her. The same one that had flared up in the restaurant when she wiped her face and stood up from the table. "Let them try," she said quietly. "I have evidence, photos, recordings, witnesses. That's exactly why I'm confident we'll win," the lawyer smiled. "But there's something else." She pulled another document from the folder. "Last night, Malik tried to violate the restraining order. The blood drained from Amara's face." "What?" "The security guard in your building recorded him at 8 p.m. He tried to get inside, saying he forgot some things. The guard didn't let him in and called the police. Malik managed to leave, but the cameras recorded everything." Amara remembered how she had been sitting in the kitchen with her parents last night, drinking tea. So at that very moment, Malik was standing at the entrance, wanting to come up. He wanted to. "This is good for us," Miss Thompson continued. "Violating a court order is an aggravating circumstance. The court will take this into account when making the final verdict." "What if he comes again?" Amara's voice trembled. What if the guard isn't there? I've already contacted the police. They'll increase patrols in the area. Plus, I recommend you don't leave the house alone for a while. Ask your parents or friends to accompany you. So even now, when she was free, Malik continued to control her life, forcing her to hide, to be afraid, to limit herself. No, enough. I'm not going to hide, Amara said firmly. I hid for 3 years. For 3 years, I walked on eggshells, afraid to even breathe. Not anymore. Miss Thompson looked at her intently. Amara, I understand your feelings, but safety is more important than pride. This isn't pride. Amara straightened up in her chair. This is my life, and I won't let him take it from me again. The lawyer paused, then nodded. All right, but at least carry pepper spray with you and keep your phone on hand with 911 on speed dial. Deal? They spent another hour discussing the details of the upcoming trial. What questions might be asked again? How best to answer? What to say and what not to? Miss Thompson was patient and attentive, but Amara felt the tension building with each minute. When she left the office, it was almost noon. The sun was breaking through the gray clouds. The street was cold but fresh. Amara took out her phone to call her mother and noticed 3 missed calls, all from an unknown number. Her heart sank. She knew who it was. Of course she knew. The phone vibrated in her hand. The same unknown number. Amara stood on the sidewalk, staring at the screen. She could ignore it, decline the call, block the number. But something inside, that same spark of anger, made her press the green button. Hello, finally. Malik's voice was tense, angry. Have you lost your damn mind? Not picking up your phone? 3 months ago, that tone would have terrified her, made her start apologizing, making excuses. Now, Amara just listened silently to his breathing on the line. I came by yesterday, he continued. I still have things there. You have to return them. You have nothing there. Don't lie to me, he snarled. My watch, my stamp collection, my papers, it's all with me, Malik. A pause. Amara could hear him breathing heavily. You think you've won? His voice became quieter, more dangerous. You think the court will help you? I'll find a way. I always find a way. These words used to make her tremble. Now, Amara only felt tired. Malik, leave me alone. You've already lost. Accept it. I haven't lost anything, he yelled. You're my wife. You're supposed to. Amara ended the call, blocked the number, stood for another minute looking at the phone, then put it in her purse. Her hands were barely shaking. She walked home, and with every step, she felt something changing inside. The fear hadn't disappeared. It still lived somewhere deep inside, a shadow at the edge of her consciousness. But now, next to it, there was something else. Determination, anger, and the right to her own life. Monday would be a tough day. Court, testimony, facing Malik again. But Amara was ready. She was no longer the woman who had gotten married 3 years ago, full of hope. Not the one who endured beatings and humiliation, believing things would get better. And not even the one who, 3 months ago, had wiped her face with a napkin in a restaurant. She was someone who had walked through hell and come out the other side, burned but alive, broken but putting herself back together piece by piece and ready to fight for her right to live. Amara woke to the sound of rain drumming against the windowsill. The room was dark. She stretched, feeling an unaccustomed lightness in her body. 3 months ago, she would wake up with a heaviness in her chest, anticipating another day of humiliation. Now, everything was different. The phone on her nightstand vibrated. A message from Miss Thompson. Amara, good morning. Court is at 10 a.m. today. Please arrive by 9:30. We'll go over the final details. Everything will be fine. Amara exhaled slowly. Monday. The day she had been waiting for and dreading at the same time. Today, the judge was supposed to deliver the verdict in the criminal case against Malik. She got out of bed and went to the window. The rain was getting heavier, turning the street into a gray, blurry smear. In the bathroom, she looked at her reflection for a long time. The bruises were long gone. Her face looked calm, even rested. But her eyes, they still held a watchfulness, a readiness for danger. That caution had become part of her, ingrained in her skin over 3 years of marriage. The last time, she whispered to the mirror. The last time I see him in court, and then it's over. But even as she said the words, she wasn't entirely sure. Amara dressed carefully, an elegant white blouse and black trousers. Minimal makeup. Hair pulled back in a low bun. Miss Thompson had taught her, in court, every detail matters. Every detail creates an image. The victim must look dignified, but not defiant. Her parents had insisted on coming with her, but Amara had refused. In the taxi, she was silent, watching the wet streets. The driver tried to make small talk about the weather, but quickly fell silent, sensing her tension. The courthouse greeted her with its cold, official indifference. Marble, high ceilings, the echo of footsteps. Miss Thompson was already waiting at the entrance to the courtroom, holding a thick folder of documents. "Amara," she said, putting an arm around her shoulders. "How are you feeling?" "Fine," Amara lied. Her hands were shaking, and her heart was beating somewhere in her throat. "Listen to me carefully, Miss." Thompson pulled her aside, speaking quietly but firmly. "Malik will be in the room. Do not react to him emotionally. All we need are the facts. And the facts are on our side." Amara nodded. The courtroom doors opened. A clerk announced, "Case number 2847. Resumed hearing. Please enter. Sit down," Miss Thompson said quietly, guiding her to the table. Amara sat, clasping her hands on her lap. They were trembling. She hid them under the table. The judge entered. Everyone stood. "Please be seated." The court now hears the criminal case against Malik Omar Johnson, charged with crimes under statutes 16523, battery, and 16521, aggravated assault with threat to life. The judge's voice was even emotionless. She read from the case file, listing the episodes of violence described in the indictment. Every word took Amara back to the past. The bruised ribs after Malik hit her for undersalting the soup. The broken finger when she tried to defend herself. The threats to kill her if she dared to leave. The prosecution may present its case. The prosecutor, a woman in a sharp black suit, stood up. She spoke clearly, presenting facts, referencing evidence, medical records, photographs, the restaurant video, witness testimonies. The judge was silent, then announced, "The court will now recess to deliberate on a final verdict." Everyone stood, the judge exited, and the waiting began. Amara sat on a hard wooden bench in the courthouse hallway, staring at her hands. They weren't shaking anymore. Over the past few months, something had changed inside her. Fear was gradually receding, giving way to a calm confidence. The courtroom door opened. Miss Thompson came out first. Her face showed a reserved satisfaction. "The verdict is ready," she announced. "Let's go in." Amara stood up. Her legs felt like jelly, but she forced herself to walk steadily, not showing her nervousness. In the courtroom, Malik sat between two bailiffs. He turned sharply when he heard her footsteps. Their eyes met. Before, a single look from him would have made her cringe, lower her eyes, hide within herself. But now, Amara looked directly at him, not looking away, and saw something she had never seen before. Fear. Malik was afraid. Afraid of what was about to happen. "All rise," the clerk announced. The judge entered with a folder of documents and took her seat. The room fell into a tense silence. "You may be seated." The judge opened the folder and put on her glasses. Amara listened as the judge read the verdict. Words formed sentences, and sentences formed a destiny. Malik was found guilty on all counts: battery, aggravated assault, and terroristic threats. Given the severity and systematic nature of the crimes, the court sentences the defendant, Malik Omar Johnson, to 2 years of imprisonment in a state correctional facility. Malik was grabbed by the arms. He struggled, continuing to shout, but he was dragged toward the exit. At the very door, he turned and looked at Amara. His eyes were filled with a mixture of rage and despair. "I'll be back," he screamed. "You hear me? I'll be back." And you, Miss Thompson, approached her with documents. "Congratulations," she said. "It's a good sentence." Given he had no prior convictions, they could have given him probation, but the evidence was overwhelming, and the court considered the systematic nature of the violence. "Thank you." Amara shook her hand. "Thank you for everything. Now the most important thing is to move on with your life." The lawyer looked at her seriously. "Don't look back. You're a young woman. You have your whole life ahead of you." Amara nodded, but everything inside clenched. Life. What would it be like now? The first few weeks after the verdict passed in a strange daze, Amara went to work. She had switched from remote to in-office. Her colleagues treated her cautiously, as if she were made of fragile glass and might shatter from a careless word. Her director called her into his office on the second day. "Amara." He cleared his throat awkwardly. "I want to apologize. We didn't know about your situation. If we had known, it's okay, Amara interrupted. I didn't tell anyone myself. Nevertheless, he pushed some papers toward her. We'd like to help you financially. Amara looked at the number and blinked. $10,000. Thank you, she said quietly. The money was needed. Legal fees, the lawyer, new locks, apartment repairs. It all cost a lot. The compensation from Malik hadn't arrived yet, and Miss a plaque of her compensation from Malik.com. Thompson had warned that she might have to file for enforcement through the courts. But it wasn't about the money. Amara had returned to office work because she needed a routine. She needed something to fill the emptiness that had formed inside after the fear was gone. In the evenings, she would sit in her renovated apartment and try to understand who she was now. For 3 years, she had been a victim, then for a few months, a fighter for justice. And now, who was she? The therapist she continued to see once a week spoke of the need to rediscover herself. You lived for 3 years in constant stress, Dr. Evans explained. Your psyche was in survival mode. Now that the threat is gone, you need to learn to live again, not just survive. Live. And how do you do that? Amara asked. It's different for everyone, the therapist smiled. But it always starts with one thing: giving yourself permission to feel. Joy, sadness, anger, fear, everything you've suppressed all these years, Amara tried. That evening, she sat on her sofa, closed her eyes, and allowed herself to feel. At first, there was nothing, just emptiness. Then, a wave rose from somewhere deep inside. Not fear, not pain, but anger. She was angry at Malik for everything he had done, at Mama Rose for supporting her son in his cruelty, at herself for enduring it for so long, at the world for allowing such things to happen. Amara cried. For the first time in all these months, she cried not from fear or pain, but from rage. The tears streamed down her cheeks, and she didn't wipe them away. Let them flow. Let all that poisoned anger come out. When the tears ended, she felt lighter, as if a space had been cleared inside for something else. A month after the verdict, a strange woman called Amara. Hello, the voice was hesitant, trembling. My name is Keisha. I read about your story online. Did you? Did you really go through all that and make it out? Amara froze with the phone to her ear. Yes, she answered slowly. I did. Me too, the woman sobbed. My husband has been hitting me for 5 years. I'm afraid to leave. He says he'll find me anywhere, that he'll kill me. But I read your story and thought, maybe there's a way out. Amara gripped the phone tighter. Her heart was pounding. There is a way out, she said firmly. There's always a way out. Tell me about your situation. They talked for 2 hours. Amara told her where to start, who to contact, how to gather evidence, where to find help. She gave her Miss Thompson's contact information and the number for a domestic violence shelter. When the call ended, Amara sat for a long time, staring into space. Something had changed, something important. She opened her laptop and started writing. At first, just for herself, about what she had been through, what she had felt, how she had found her strength. The words flowed as if a dam had broken. By midnight, she had 5 pages of text. Amara reread what she had written and realized it wasn't just for her. It was for those who were where she had been a year ago, those who thought there was no way out. She created a blog, called it simply A Way Out, and posted her story. The response came the very next day. Dozens of comments from women who had experienced similar things. Hundreds of words of gratitude, and new stories, each one more terrifying than the last. Amara read and cried. Cried because there were so many of them, because each one thought she was alone, because so many were still in the hell she had managed to escape. And then she understood who she was now. Not a victim, not a fighter, a guide. The one who had walked this path and could show others the way. 18 months had passed since the sentencing. Amara sat in a small office she had rented 3 months ago. On the door was a sign, A Way Out Support Center. What started as a blog had grown into something more. Now she had a team, a psychologist, a lawyer, Miss Thompson, who had agreed to work with them pro bono twice a week, and herself, the coordinator. Amara, a young woman is here to see you, the psychologist. Elena peeked into the office. No appointment, says it's urgent. Amara nodded, putting aside her documents. There were many such urgent visits. Women came when they could no longer bear it, when the last drop made the cup overflow. A young woman of about 25 entered the reception area. She had tried to cover the bruise under her eye with concealer. but Amara had seen it too many times not to notice. The sleeve of her sweater was pulled over her hand, probably hiding more marks. "My name is Jasmine," the visitor introduced herself quietly. "I read your blog. You wrote that you help people. Please, sit down." Amara pointed to a comfortable chair. "Would you like some tea or coffee?" "No, thank you." Jasmine sat on the edge of the chair, clutching her purse. "I don't know where to start." "Start with what brought you here today," Amara suggested gently. Jasmine's story was painfully familiar. Her husband started with criticism, moved on to control, then to shoves and slaps. And now he beat her regularly. Her mother-in-law blamed her for everything, saying she provoked him. Jasmine was 3 months pregnant and feared for her child. Amara listened, took notes, and everything inside her tightened with a familiar pain. She recognized herself in every word. "Jasmine, you did the right thing by coming here," she said when the young woman finished. "Right now, the most important thing is your safety, and the safety of your child. Do you have a place to go?" "I could go to my mother's, but she lives in another state. That's even better. Distance is extra protection." Amara opened a folder. "I'm going to give you the contact information for a crisis shelter that will take you in any time of day. Miss Thompson, our lawyer, will help you file a police report and get a restraining order. Elena, the psychologist, will work with you online if you go to your mother's." Jasmine looked at her with wide eyes. Is all of this free?" "Yes, we operate on donations." Amara handed her a business card. "This is my personal number. Call anytime if you're in danger. Deal?" When Jasmine left with a folder of information and a clear plan of action, Amara leaned back in her chair. Fatigue washed over her in waves after such meetings. Each story reopened old wounds but simultaneously gave her the strength to continue. Her phone vibrated. A message from Miss Thompson. "Amara, we need to meet urgently. It's about Malik." Her heart sank. Amara looked at the calendar. He still had 6 months until he was eligible for parole. What could have happened? They met in a cafe an hour later. Miss Thompson looked worried. "I got a call from the parole board," she began without preamble. "Malik has filed a petition for early release." Amara felt a chill run through her. "But he's only served a year and a half of his 2-year sentence. With good behavior and positive recommendations, they can be released after serving 2/3 of their term." Miss Thompson took out some documents. "He's completed a psychological rehabilitation program, works in the prison workshop. The administration gave him a positive review." "A positive review," Amara repeated bitterly. "He threatened me right there in the courtroom. I remember, and I will be sure to remind the board of that at the hearing." Miss Thompson placed a hand on hers. "Amara, you have the right to speak at this hearing, to explain why you believe his release is premature. When is the hearing?" "In 3 weeks." Amara nodded. 3 weeks to prepare, 3 weeks to gather her courage and once again face the man who had turned her life into hell. That evening, she sat in her renovated apartment, but her thoughts gave her no peace. She opened her laptop and started writing a post for her blog. Writing always helped her sort through her feelings. "Today I learned that my ex-husband might be released from prison early, and you know what I felt? Fear. Yes, even after everything I've been through, even after building a new life, I was scared. And that's okay. Fear doesn't mean weakness. Fear means I remember, that I haven't forgotten the lessons, that I will be cautious. But fear no longer controls me. A year and a half ago, I would have just accepted it, thought there was nothing I could do. But now I know I can. I have a voice. I have rights, and I will fight." The comments started appearing within minutes. Words of support, stories from other women, questions. Amara answered each one, feeling the tension gradually subside. The doorbell rang. She flinched. An old habit she couldn't seem to break. She looked through the peephole. It was her mother. "I saw your post," her mother said, entering the apartment. "Baby girl, how are you?" "I'm okay." Amara hugged her. "Really? It was just unexpected. Your father wanted to come with me, but he has a meeting. He told me to tell you that we're with you, no matter what you decide." They sat on the sofa, and Amara told her everything. About the petition, the upcoming hearing, her fears and doubts. "Are you going to go to the hearing?" her mother asked. "Yes. I have to." Amara clenched her fists. He can't just get out and go on with his life like nothing happened. The board needs to hear my side. Then we're going with you, me and your father. Don't argue, Amara. Her mother stroked her hand. You did the impossible for us. You broke free, built a new life, And now you're helping others. Now it's our turn to support you. The next 3 weeks flew by in preparation. Miss Thompson helped her draft a written statement where Amara detailed the history of abuse, including the most recent threats. They gathered additional documents, medical records, witness statements, printouts of messages. Elena, the center's psychologist, had several sessions with Amara, preparing her for the meeting with Malik. Remember, you don't have to look at him, Elena said. You can address the board directly. Your job is to deliver the facts, not to engage in a dialogue with him. And if he starts threatening you again, it will only work against him. Any display of aggression will prove to the board that he hasn't changed. Amara nodded, taking notes, but her stomach was in knots. She knew it wouldn't be easy. The day before the hearing, Jasmine called, the young woman who had come to the office. Amara, I wanted to thank you. Her voice sounded stronger, more confident. I went to my mom's, filed for divorce, and got a restraining order. And you know what? I feel free. Jasmine, I'm so happy for you. Amara smiled through tears. You're amazing. You're so brave. You taught me to be. Your story gave me strength, and I want you to know, you're not alone. All the women you've helped, we're all with you, always. After hanging up, Amara knew she was ready to face her past, because she was no longer the terrified woman who had been kicked face first into a plate of grits. She was the one who had gotten up, brushed herself off, and built a new life. And she would not let fear win again. Amara sat in the hallway of the correctional facility, clutching a folder of documents. Her knuckles were white from the tension. Miss Thompson sat beside her, reviewing something on her tablet. The lawyer looked composed and calm, as always before an important hearing. Breathe evenly, she said quietly, not looking up from the screen. You're perfectly prepared. We have all the aces. Amara nodded, but the lump in her throat wouldn't go away. She had spent a sleepless night replaying all the possible scenarios in her head. What if the board decided Malik had reformed? What if his eloquence and manipulative skills worked here too? The door at the end of the hallway opened. A man in uniform came out and called them in. Amara hadn't seen him in a year and a half. He had lost weight, his hair was cut short, and his face wore a carefully crafted expression of remorse. When their eyes met, he humbly, submissively, lowered his gaze. Amara felt a familiar chill clench inside her. She knew that Mask had seen it dozens of times after every fight, after every blow. The hearing of the parole board to consider the petition of inmate Malik Omar Johnson for conditional early release is now open, began the chairman, a man in his 50s with a tired face. The next 20 minutes were spent on formalities. They read Malik's character reference, his behavior in prison, his participation in work programs. Everything sounded exemplary. Amara listened, feeling panic rise within her. The inmate's record is positive, the warden read monotonously. He has no disciplinary infractions, participates in arts and crafts, works in the production shop, has received multiple commendations, attends psychological counseling, and demonstrates remorse and an understanding of his actions. Malik sat with his head bowed, playing the part of the perfectly repentant criminal. Amara clenched her fists under the table. The inmate may now address the board, the chairman announced. Malik stood up. His voice was quiet, broken. I am grateful to the board for this opportunity to speak. This year and a half has been a time of deep reflection for me. I have come to realize the full horror of what I did. Every day, I think about the pain I caused the person closest to me. He paused, as if holding back emotion. I completed a course of psychotherapy, worked on myself, and understood the roots of my aggression. I want to atone for my guilt. I want to prove that I have changed. I have a job offer. The support of my mother. I am prepared to continue therapy on the outside. I ask that you give me a chance. Amara listened and couldn't believe her ears. Every word sounded right, rehearsed. He had clearly practiced this speech. Several board members exchanged glances, and Amara caught a hint of something like sympathy in their eyes. Thank you, the chairman nodded. Are there any questions for the inmate? A female psychologist leaned forward. Mr. Johnson, tell us, what exactly did you come to understand about the causes of your behavior? I grew up in a home where my father was violent toward my mother, Malik began, and Amara almost jumped up. It was a lie. She knew his parents. His father was a quiet, meek man, and his mother was the domestic tyrant. I learned the wrong model for relationships. But now I understand that violence is unacceptable under any circumstances. I have learned to control my anger, to recognize my triggers. He spoke for another 5 minutes, spewing psychological terms he had clearly memorized. Amara saw some of the board members nodding in approval. The victim may now address the board, the chairman finally said. Amara stood, her legs weak, but she forced herself to speak firmly. My name is Amara. For 3 years, I lived with this man. For 3 years, I endured beatings, humiliation, and threats. He controlled my every move, forbade me from seeing my parents, took my money, and beat me for the slightest thing looking at him the wrong way, cooking the wrong food, breathing too loudly. Her voice grew stronger. I've heard these apologies dozens of times. After every beating, he would cry, swear it would never happen again. He'd buy flowers, promise to change. And a week later, or a day later, it would all start over. Malik sat without raising his eyes, but Amara noticed his jaw tighten. A year and a half is not enough time for a man like him. He hasn't changed. He has learned to say the right words. Those are 2 different things. Amara pulled papers from her folder. I have letters he sent me from prison through third parties. Would you like to hear them? Without waiting for an answer, she began to read. You will regret what you did. I will get out, and you will know what real pain is. That was 4 months after he was sentenced. Amara turned the page. You destroyed my life. I will find you, no matter where you hide. That was 8 months ago. My mother is sick because of your scheming. If anything happens to her, I will kill you. 3 months ago. A silence fell over the room. The representative from the DA's office straightened up. Do you have proof of this? Miss Thompson stood and handed the board a folder. Printouts of messages from phone numbers registered to Mr. Johnson's cellmates, expert conclusions confirming the writing style matches the inmate's speech patterns, and statements from 2 witnesses who confirmed that Mr. Johnson asked them to relay these messages. The chairman flipped through the documents, his frown deepening. The psychologist also took the folder, studying its contents intently. Inmate Johnson, the chairman addressed him. Can you comment on this? Malik was silent for a few seconds. Amara watched his face change. The mask of remorse was slowly slipping, replaced by a familiar expression of cold anger. That was a long time ago, at the very beginning. I was angry, I couldn't accept it, but I've changed since then, he finally squeezed out. 3 months ago is not the very beginning. The DA's representative cut in sharply. And these are direct threats of violence. The victim's counsel may speak, the chairman announced. Miss Thompson stood up, laying out her documents. Members of the board, I ask you to note the following facts. First, the inmate has systematically violated the no-contact order with the victim, which is a gross violation of his prison terms. Second, the content of the threats indicates a continued aggressive intent. Third, she paused, we have witness testimony from his cellmates that Miss Johnson has repeatedly spoken of his plans for revenge after his release. She handed over another folder. The chairman took it, his eyes scanning the first few pages. His face turned to stone. There are testimonies from 3 individuals here, Miss Thompson continued. All of them, independently of each other, reported Mr. Johnson's statements to the prison administration. I quote, she's gonna pay for everything. I'm gonna find her and show her what real fear is. She won't live to see next year. Malik shot up from his seat. That's a lie. They're getting back at me. Sit down, the chairman ordered coldly. Why was this testimony not presented earlier? The warden hesitated. We conducted an internal investigation. The statements came in at different times from different people. We didn't think it was necessary. You didn't think it was necessary to report direct death threats? The DA's representative interrupted. This is an outrageous failure. The atmosphere in the room had changed. Amara felt the tension in her shoulders begin to release. The board members conferred in low voices, studying the documents. The board will now recess to deliberate, the chairman announced. They left. Amara remained seated, unable to move. Miss Thompson placed a hand on her shoulder. You did great. You said everything right. Malik sat at his table, his fists clenched. The guard stood beside him, not taking his eyes off him. Amara no longer looked in his direction. She didn't need to see his face to know that there was no remorse left, only rage. 20 minutes passed, then another 10. Finally, the door opened, and the board returned. All rise, the chairman said. The board has reviewed the petition of inmate Malik Omar Johnson for conditional early release. Taking into account the evidence provided of systematic threats against the victim, the violation of the no-contact order, and witness testimony regarding his continued aggressive intentions, the board has decided to deny the petition. Amara exhaled. The world swam before her eyes. Furthermore, the chairman continued, the materials regarding the threats and rule violations will be forwarded to the investigative authorities to consider opening a new criminal case under Statute 16521, aggravated assault. Malik turned white. A bailiff already had him by the elbow. This is a setup, he screamed. She framed me. He was escorted out of the room. His shouts faded behind the closing door. Amara sat motionless while Miss Thompson gathered her documents. Then she slowly stood up. Her legs were still shaking, but something warm and bright was spreading inside her. She had won. Again. Amara stood at the exit of the correctional facility and didn't immediately realize it was raining. The drops fell on her face, mixing with the last of her tears. But she didn't care. She just stood there, clutching the folder, trying to grasp it. It was really over. Miss Thompson came out after her. That's it. Now it's certain. He won't get out early. And what's more, if a new case is confirmed, his sentence could be extended. Amara nodded, but the words seemed to come through water. He can't hurt me anymore. She didn't finish the sentence. He can't, the lawyer calmly confirmed. And even if he ever gets out, you have protection, you have experience, and you have a life that he no longer has access to. That phrase finally broke through the silence inside her. A life he no longer has access to. Amara slowly exhaled. That evening, she returned home. She opened the door and, for the first time in a long time, didn't look over her shoulder, didn't listen for footsteps, didn't check if someone was standing around the corner. She just walked in. The silence greeted her softly, almost caringly. Amara took off her coat, walked into the living room, and stopped in the middle of the room. The same sofa, the same plants, the light from the window that once seemed foreign but was now her own. She placed the folder on the table and suddenly realized there was no fear, no anger inside, just emptiness. But it was a different kind of emptiness now. Not the kind that follows pain, but the kind from which something new begins. Her phone vibrated. A message from Jasmine. Amara, I signed the divorce papers today, thank you. I couldn't have done it without you. Amara smiled. Then another message, and another. Women were writing, sharing, thanking, asking for advice. She opened her laptop, went to her blog, and froze for a moment. Thousands of people, thousands of stories, and among them, hers. Amara slowly sat down and began to write. Today, my ex-husband was denied early release. And you know what I felt? Not joy, not malice. Just calm. Because justice isn't when someone else suffers, but when evil no longer has power over your life. I was afraid of this day. I thought I would break again, become that woman who's afraid to open her own door. But it didn't happen, because I am not that woman anymore. If you are reading this now and thinking there is no way out, there is. I am living proof. She stopped, looked at the screen, and for the first time in a long time, felt no pain rereading her story. Only strength. Several more months passed. Amara stood at the entrance to her center, a way out. The sign glinted faintly in the sun. Nearby, two young women were laughing. One of them had recently come for help. The other was now working as a volunteer. Life went on. And it didn't just go on. It grew from the pain, from the fear, from that very moment when she stood up from the table and walked away without looking back. Amara closed her eyes for a second. That night in the restaurant flashed in her memory, the cold grits, the laughter, the humiliation, and her steps toward the exit. Back then, it had seemed like an escape. Now, she understood it was the first step toward freedom. Amara. Elena called from inside. A young woman is here to see you. She says it's urgent. Amara opened her eyes, smiled, and walked inside. Because now, her story didn't end. It was just beginning.